Hello, welcome to another episode of The Dans. I'm Dan McKay. I'm here with my colleague Dan Boyd, and we're heading into sort of a pretty crucial stretch of the legislative session. These last 3 weeks are when the fate of a number of bills is going to be decided. But Dan, we had some news today. We've got a few bills signed. What news came out of the governor's office today?
Yeah, we've just found out, not surprisingly, but that Gov. Michelle Lujan Grisham has signed into law a bill repealing a 1969 abortion ban. This is a bill that was defeated on the Senate floor 2 years ago. This year, it got through both chambers on largely party line votes, not strictly party line. And the governor has signed it into law today. It will take effect in mid-June, but obviously that's kind of the culmination of an issue we've been tracking for quite a while. So certainly probably won't end the debate on abortion in New Mexico, but a significant development. The governor also signed a separate bill today that'll authorize some more business grants to kind of help businesses that have been hit hard by the coronavirus pandemic and some of the associated restrictions imposed in response to that.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about the abortion bill is that it failed on the Senate floor 2 years ago, and it really kind of triggered this broader shakeup in sort of the political composition of the roundhouse. It was a major issue in a number of the primary races. Some of the Democrats who had opposed the abortion bill 2 years ago ended up losing to challengers, more progressive challengers. So consideration of the bill is going to have, it's going to have these broader impacts for the legislature, and we'll see how that plays out, on other bills for the rest of the session. Dan, looking ahead, it looks like we're headed into a few days where cannabis may be at the top of the agenda. What's the latest on that one?
Yeah, we're expecting there've been, I think, 5 different bills introduced on legalizing recreational cannabis, and I think we're starting to see which one of those are going to get some traction and move forward, and which ones might not, and then kind of merging or combining different elements of them. The House could vote as early as this afternoon on one bill, and then the Senate is expected over the weekend to take up a few kind of competing proposals. It'll be really crucial to see what happens with those over the next few weeks or coming days even, and which ones are kind of viable in the home stretch of this year's session.
Yeah, so it looks like the bill that's going to be on the House floor today, at least we're expecting it to come up today, would legalize marijuana use for adults 21 and over. It sets out a bunch of policy questions or answers a bunch of policy questions on how much it would be taxed, all that kind of thing. It looks like it would, the maximum tax rate is somewhere around 21%, I think, based on the number of different agencies could tax the sale. There would be an excise tax with revenue going to the state. Cities and counties could also impose their own taxes. So there's all kinds of policy questions the legislature has to answer. One of which is, if you set the taxation too high, then it may sort of not, the illicit market may never go away because people will just choose the cheaper alternative. So there are all kinds of really tricky things they have to consider when they do this. So Dan, do you think that any of these ideas, the potential bills, has an advantage over the others? Any thoughts on sort of what we'll be looking at as this hits the Senate?
I think clearly the House has shown that that's the approach, that the bill you mentioned is the approach the House prefers. I do think a few issues kind of to keep in mind, in addition to the taxation rate. The bills have different guidelines, would impose different limits when it comes to personal production or kind of home grow of cannabis. That could be a real issue to keep an eye on. Also, whether counties would be able to opt out of the program. There's different ideas about that. I believe the House bill would not allow counties to opt out. So one benefit of New Mexico being able to look at some other states like Colorado that have done it and maybe pick bits and pieces from the different states' approach. But certainly there's still a lot of opponents of legalizing cannabis too, and I don't think that it's, a slam dunk at this point that a bill will emerge and make it to the governor's desk.
Yeah, there are just so many different ways for a bill to get hung up because there's so many different questions. Even if a majority of both chambers says, "Hey, we support the concept of legalization," there are just so many different details to look at. 2 years ago, the first cannabis legalization bill to pass a chamber involved the concept of state-run stores, sort of like Utah liquor stores, but I don't know that idea is going to advance. It's not part of the version that the House is going to consider today. Well, probably perhaps the most important thing the legislature does every session is the budget. Where do things stand with that one, Dan?
Yeah, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the budget passing the House this week. Significantly, it passed by a pretty decisive bipartisan vote, 60-10, unlike in previous years when it had passed on a more party line vote. So that bill is about $7.4 billion in spending for the coming fiscal year. It now goes over to the Senate. Typically, the Senate makes some changes to it and then would send it back to the House after they approve it. So things are about on schedule with that. A few things to note, the budget would almost return state spending to where it was before the pandemic. Oil prices have rebounded and production has rebounded. That's helped the state's revenue, but still a lot of questions about the state's economy. A lot of businesses still struggling. So kind of a good news is the state has a lot of kind of one-time money in cash reserves that they can use to kind of pass some of these relief programs, aid programs, but the long-term revenue outlook is still pretty uncertain. And we've seen over the last few years, it's kind of been a roller coaster ride going from big surpluses to deficits. So trying to find a little more kind of, not quite so much volatility when it comes to the budget.
Yeah, and before we let you go, why don't you give us a quick update on some of the pandemic relief bills? You mentioned one was signed today, but there are a number of pieces. Any highlights you want to hit on sort of the legislature and the governor's attempt to help the economy?
Yeah, there are a few different bills. Another one that is headed to the governor's desk, hasn't got there yet, but involves rebates for essential workers, kind of tax credits that would help the people on the front lines, grocery store workers, janitors. It would also kind of impose a 4-month tax holiday for restaurants, give them a little bit of financial relief. That's one. A separate bill would pause liquor license fees for 1 year. And important to keep in mind, this is kind of the third pandemic relief package that we've seen. The legislature also approved 2 different packages last year during the special session. And there's also some hopes that there could be additional federal relief on the way as well. So, not sure these will solve all the issues that New Mexicans and businesses are facing, but certainly kind of sounds like it's going to be welcomed if it is approved, which we expect it to be, and giving kind of a lifeline. And hopefully now that we're in the final kind of throes of the pandemic.
Yeah, so as always, we want to say thank you to everyone who tunes in. Thank you for people who subscribe, click on our stories. We're really thankful to be able to offer some local journalism and be inside the building and tell you guys what is happening in this sort of really unusual time. You can probably tell I'm starting to get deeper circles under my eyes because the nights are getting later and the mornings are getting earlier, and we may not have many more days off, if any, until the session concludes in about 3 weeks. So thanks again for your help, and I'll let Dan have the last word.
Yeah, I just thank everyone for following our coverage. I've been feeling a little under the weather this week myself, but feeling better now, and just goes to show you can't keep a good Dan down.